Hi, welcome to Burned Out and Overloaded. Solutions to help you feel good while doing good. So last night I presented to a group of you and it was wonderful. I felt all your wonderful energy and I hit the record button and it indicated it was recording. And when I checked it out after the presentation was over, it said error in recording and nothing was recorded. So this morning I am recording it, trying it again. And so this will not be the exact thing from last night where I was able to pick up your wonderful dedicated energy to inspire me to keep going. But I did want to go ahead and try it again today so that this recording was available to people that couldn't make it. So I don't have the wonderful introduction that Ray gave to me, but let me just briefly tell you, I'm Linda Harper. I'm a clinical psychologist outside of the Chicago area. And my passion is helping people who help animals and through consults and workshops and presentations like this. So I'm happy to be here with you or when you guys are able to watch this presentation and be available to you. I did go on your website for City Dogs and City Kitties, and it was very convincing to want to join your group. What a supportive, accepting, passionate, animal loving group of people that I'm presenting to last night. And then as you get a chance to look at it today, I have a nephew that lives out in the area in Falls Church. And so it'd be wonderful if someday I'm out there to see all of you and also have a little visit with him, but I'm definitely going to share with him about this organization. He has 2 dogs and a cat and 3 kids himself. And he and his wife are very big rescue animal loving people. So I'm also happy to see that you have chosen to attend this session because it doesn't specifically say that these are direct ways to save 5 or 10 more animals every week, which is, I know, what your main passion and idea is, to get help to help more animals. But you already know in choosing to come to this session that when we, let's see if I can get this to switch. When we save ourselves and save people, we are saving more animals. It takes people to save the animals. And this always has to begin within. Of course, we all know it takes more than a village to save all the animals, but it still begins within. And it really begins with recognizing that this is no ordinary part of your life. Loving animals, helping them, passion to make life better for them, saving them. This is a journey of the soul. And what I mean by that is it's going to touch your deepest self inside, and at the same time, connect you beyond to all the shared journey of all the people in the country and the world that feel that passion and that love of animals. Until one has loved an animal, a part of one's soul remains unawakened. It's so true. But once it is awakened, there's no going back. So whether you're volunteering a few hours or working 80 hours, whatever it could be a week, it's a journey of the soul. And what that means is of course, there's going to be the challenges and the struggles and the sadness. We all know it's not easy, but there's also that sense of fulfillment and joy and love and connection with these amazing beings. And so that is why compassionate heart training, I like to call it, is really something that all of us, any of us, could benefit from, no matter where you are on your journey, whether you're still in the 100% pure excitement, every moment is full of joy and you're energized and invigorated, or whether you're starting to get a little exhausted or depleted, or having experiences that feel like they're setting you back. Wherever you might be on the journey, compassionate heart training can help us be proactive, to find ways to keep us going. And I've got my little mascot, Chili Dog. He was created after a wonderful little dachshund that I had for 5 years, who was my therapy assistant. I rescued him when he was 10 and was able to have him for 5 more years. It just felt like he helped me keep going a lot of times myself. But he's got his little shoes on to remind us that this is 24 hours, 7 days a week. We never forget about our animals, no matter what we're doing. And we can be asked to help at other times in our life, or be looking on the internet. It's 24 hours, 7 days a week, this love of animals. So it's a marathon, and we need to pace ourselves. We can't use those same old ways of just, okay, I'm gonna stay up late for a week and get all this done and figure out the problem and do everything I want to do. It just doesn't work that way. This is a whole lifetime kind of thing. So I'm hoping to give you a tool today, Honor Feelings Reframe Story, that it's called, that will help us on this journey of compassion. So what do I mean by compassion? Compassion is truly what fuels every animal-loving individual, organization, this whole growing, wonderful movement of helping animals. So let me just help you relate to it. So are you attuned to the suffering, the needs of animals? It stirs you inside, and then you take action, right? Yeah, so that's compassion, love in action, that's compassion. But now let me ask you something else. Do you feel you're attuned to your own needs and sufferings when they come up? They stir you inside, and then you take action to take care of that need? It's not quite as natural and easy to do, right? And that's where we block the flow of compassion. And so part of what we're going to be looking at today with our tool is, how do we make sure we're including ourselves in that flow of compassion? Because compassion is such a powerful energy. We see it at work. Look at what this animal helping movement has done just in my lifetime since I first got involved, from 15 to 20 million animals being euthanized in the country every year to now less than 1 million. That's incredible growth. I mean, anyone that adoptable and needing to be euthanized is too many. One too many is one too many. But the progress, and it's all from this flow of compassion. But when we don't let that compassion flow where it needs to go, including back to you, sometimes that compassion that can do more harm than good. And then we see that with burnout and compassion fatigue and overstressed, and all the consequences that can have on individuals and organizations and the whole movement. So today, if I were to simplify what I'm hoping for you to get from this workshop, is what the Tao Te Ching says so wonderfully: compassionate toward yourself, you reconcile all beings in the world. How do we make sure we're including ourselves in the flow of compassion, so we're not blocking and letting it go where it needs to flow. So let me just tell you a little bit about my story to have you understand how I got to where I am right now, talking to all of you. So as I mentioned in the beginning, I'm a clinical psychologist. I've been for over 35 years, almost 40 by now. And the last 15, 20 years, my specialty has been working with people with the animal challenges of the animal human companion bond, and people who are dedicated to helping animals through pet loss support group and workshops that I give now, mostly on Zoom, for healing heart workshops for people dealing with the loss of their beloved, and also the challenges of rescue and helping animals and all the challenges that come with our love for animals. So back in 2005, or 2004, 2005, I did start an organization here in Chicago called Blessed Bonds. That was the logo over there. And the goal was, what we would do is we would temporarily foster people's dogs and cats for them when they were in some kind of crisis, whatever that might be, medical crisis, homelessness, joblessness. And we would take in their dogs and cats, and sometimes it was a bird or a ferret or a rabbit, whatever it would be. And then we would give them back to them when they were able to care for them again. So we were reuniting families and keeping families together, furry and not. So it was a wonderful passion of mine, but I did not know how to set the limits. I had no compassionate heart training. I just knew I wanted to help anyone that crossed the path. And back in 2008 in the Chicago area and in the United States, with the mortgage crisis, everything that happened, we were just overloaded with requests, and before there was enough help. And I experienced every form of stress and burnout and compassion fatigue and overwhelming and exhaustion. And here, the point I would like to make is, I'm a clinical psychologist. Prior to starting Blessed Bonds, I had written a book called Give to Your Heart's Content Without Giving Yourself Away. So I was really big on self-care and self-compassion, just seeing how important that is in all of our lives. And yet, when it came to my compassionate heart for animals and loving animals, I didn't listen to a word I said in my own self-help book. I was like, no, I was picking up dogs at midnight, and it was, yeah. So what really showed me that I needed to step back, and that I was going to totally lose who I was, lose myself through this burnout and compassion fatigue. I was listening to animal activist talk about his work, and he was involved with saving whales or dolphins. And in the course of his talk, he mentioned that his work had landed him in prison for a few weeks for what he was doing and his dedication to go beyond what he should be doing. My first reaction when I heard him speak about this was, oh, that sounds really restful to be in prison for a while. No phone calls, and I could sleep. Okay, so that was really a pretty big sign that something was going on, and I needed to step back from what I'm doing. So you may not be feeling like you want to be in prison. I know that goes a little bit far, but it just shows how blind we can be to our own needs when this compassion for animals has been awakened, and yet we don't know how to navigate it where we take care of ourselves. So what are some other signs of stress that doesn't have to mean the desire to be in prison. So as a psychologist, I've divided it up according to body, mind, and soul, because people express stress in their different ways. So you may have things like trouble sleeping, aches for no reason, and more prone to getting sick. And then when you do get sick, it's harder to get well. It takes longer to get better. That can be a sign of stress and overload. And also for the mind, usually finding yourself more negative, kind of crabby, definitely more critical of people is a big thing that the animal lovers might feel. And then by soul, and I mean your innermost self, it's like it's hard to find pleasure in life anymore, and you're feeling just fragile and a general distrust of what's going to happen next. So I put these symptoms and signs up there because it's just good to keep in touch with yourself to see, am I maybe having some of this? Or even if you're not, are you noticing with someone else? And is there a little support that you can be giving to somebody else? And then when burnout really sets in, there's 3 big signs of burnout. The first is emotional exhaustion, where no matter how much sleep you're getting, you just feel depleted, very, very tired emotionally. And often there isn't a lot of sleep going on anyway when people are getting into this. But even if you're only volunteering for a few hours, but you're feeling that emotional exhaustion, it's something to pay attention to. I remember one rescuer described it as dread in the bed, where she would just wake up in the morning exhausted and just feeling some dread of what might be ahead in this work that she loves. Feeling ineffective. So no matter what you're doing, how much you're doing, your brain is focusing on what you're not getting done, the ones you're not saving, and it's causing you to feel ineffective. And the third sign is a increase in negativity. And for animal people, it's not negativity toward the animals, but 3-4-fold toward the people, just feeling really negative and let down by people, creating just a negative energy around you. And this can be for individuals. It can be seen in teams, whole organizations, and just really even get into the whole movement and how we're dealing with each other and other organizations. And we don't realize this. Often we just feel like, okay, I'm willing to sacrifice myself for these most wonderful dogs and cats, but our families can be experiencing that negative energy and difficulty from us, so they suffer. And even our own animals and the animals that we're trying to help can feel that stress too. We certainly know how intuitive and perceptive our animals can be. And I remember myself with Blessed Bonds, like I said, I was really stressed out and out of control in the burnout way. And I needed to go rescue these 2 cats quickly. And I was hurrying up and kind of yelling at my old arthritic dog to get in the house so that, I could go be Superwoman and rescue some cats. But, that certainly wasn't fair to the older dog. I'm sure she forgave me, but we don't even realize that our stress is doing that. And very importantly, other people's view of animal welfare and rescue can get affected. They can think, whoa, that's a rough life, or that person's not very, very loving. We know people say, oh, those, crazy cat people is kind of a common expression. And this is not going to attract people to help us. And it can be kind of a turn off. And of course, what we would ideally, our vision would be to have animal rescue and helping animals just be mainstream, everybody doing a little bit, not rescuers doing it all. So keeping in mind that whole big picture, we want our energy for ourselves, our families, our animals, and even for what we're putting out there to be the best possible to attract others. Okay, so let's look at the tool that we're going to be exploring today. I have called it Honor Feelings, Reframe Story. So even though this is my name for it, for this tool, it's based on a lot of information and research that has been done since ancient times. This idea of honor feelings, reframe story. That's just my modern name for it, but it really comes from ideas about it comes from the fields of philosophy, psychology, spirituality, neuroscience, some Zen, some Buddhism, the ancient wisdom from all the different scriptures. And so there's substance behind it. So it's just not just me. And we've got the little dog with his new glasses because it's what's a new way that we can look at, different way we can look at our experiences and the challenges and our own needs that can work for us and that can keep us in this wonderful journey of the soul. So we need to start with honor feelings. What do we mean by that? Accept all the different feelings that you feel. Feelings are always okay. It's the human condition to have feelings. It isn't always okay to act on those feelings, but allowing ourselves the feelings and understanding them is part of being human and part of what we need to do. So, for example, if somebody's coming into you or calling you to have you rescue they can no longer take care of a senior dog or cat, or you are taking them from a shelter that you've heard that the person gave them up because for some reason that doesn't feel very clear to you, and your empathy is going out to that senior dog or cat. And so you're feeling a lot of anger toward that person, toward that human companion that was giving them up, and you would like to just yell at them and give them a piece of your mind. Okay, so you're not going to do that. That's not going to be helpful. But the feeling of feeling that kind of anger is really just telling you about who you are, and you want to go ahead and allow yourself that feeling and honor it, that you have empathy and care about that animal, and that's why you're feeling that anger. So grief overload, I think it's important to point out that in this work we're doing, our passion and desire is to save the animals and to help them have a high quality of life in doing that. Yet part of what we see and feel and experience is grief and loss with with what we're doing. So grief overload is part of the naturally found in the work that we're doing. There are so many animals. We also are experiencing our own personal loss. Animal rescuers usually have their own number of dogs and cats, and so we're going through our own loss, which can be very significant. There's the ones you cannot help. So this journey of the soul has no boundaries in terms of what our heart wants. So that dog or cat that we see on the internet, or somebody calls us about, or we just know about down the street that we're concerned about, our heart, our compassion goes out to them. And so it's stirred and we want to take action. And that's not always what we can do. So the ones we cannot help, we grieve, we feel that loss, the ones we hear about. Also in this line of work, we are exposed to crisis and trauma regarding stories that we hear or that we're involved in or that we experience. So I'm not telling you about this to just be a downer or have you feel bad. Oh, these are all sad stories. It's more to help you be aware of, yeah, this journey of trying to save more animals paradoxically exposes us to more loss. And that can feel like grief overload. Psychologists have a term for it called cumulative grief, which is frequent and multiple loss. So some people in other lines of work or in their life, I run the pet loss support group for the Chicago Vet Association here. And sometimes people coming to that group who are experiencing significant pain over the loss of their beloved 15, 16-year-old dog or cat, it's one of their first big griefs in their life regarding how precious all these animals are. Yet for animal rescue people, that experience happens much more frequently, of course, including your own losses that you go through. So it's natural that this is a very challenging part of the journey. There's added losses in the work that I've been doing primarily on Zoom through the pandemic. There's a lot more grief and loss that people are experiencing in the last couple of years, even just loss of the usual connections and in-person support and the way that things are done, the loss of tried and true ways of doing things, unexpected loss in these couple of years, personal loss, not as much availability for in-person support, and the anticipation of possible loss. So this is also added to the challenges of the times. And loss is a big deal. It's normal for it to be intense, for there to be feelings of anxiety and disbelief, panic, guilt likes to come in there, anger, sadness, feeling loss. Loss can come in waves, so it can pop in there when you least expect it. It leaves us feeling vulnerable and fragile, and it tends to attach to other grief. So a new grief can come in and feelings from other griefs will attach to it. So again, I'm not saying this for you all to feel bad, but for you to more understand the challenges of the journey and how natural it is when we start to feel overwhelmed or more sadness than we feel we can deal with, that this is a natural part of this journey. So if you just take a minute to reflect on what's been your experience of frequent and multiple loss, has that been a factor in your life with working with animals? And perhaps you haven't stopped and thought of it that way. So what does that mean? We want to understand our feelings, allow them, and we honor them by realizing, what are they reflecting about me? So the idea here of honor feelings is not to just wallow in them, but to give them honor. Where are they coming from? They're coming from the compassionate heart. They're coming from what matters to you, your values. And those are things to be proud of about yourself, and not to just dismiss and think this is going to interfere with what I'm doing, but to give them their say, their understanding. And so what do those feelings need? comfort and quiet. And I have Molly there. And what Molly is role playing for us is that we can listen to self-comfort even in the little things. And what Molly has done is she piles up those pillows exactly how she needs to, so that they're comfortable for her. And maybe we could take a lesson from that and do the little things like that. And then there's meditation and being quiet, cuddling with a cat, with our own pets. But find your unique care and comfort, because listening deep inside, it's going to be different for all of us. But these are just some of the suggestions of things that can help. And I have a picture of nature there, because nature can be very healing and ground us, taking a walk, just stepping outside, getting sleep and taking a nap, reading a book, doing things not related to helping with animals. I've got the Zoom and the family down there getting support from our loved ones. And one of my favorite energizer and comfort is to dance with my dog. It's just definitely a favorite thing, especially the slow dancing. But we need to find our own. So the idea is just to open up and what comforts you, what works for you, what works for some people doesn't work for others. So this isn't just about exercising and eating right. It's what do you need? Because there's a healing going on with the grief and the loss the whole time that we're doing the work that we do. And yes, people say to me, I would love to do that if there was only the time to do that. We need to make that a priority and find the time. And sometimes it just starts with the first 5 minutes. So can you find in your day, ideally every day, just take 5. Sit back and say, what do I need now? What can I do? Sit with an animal and do nothing. Take in all their love. I pop a peppermint. This only takes 30 seconds or a minute, but research has actually found that sucking on a peppermint can take us from the sympathetic nervous state, where we're more worked up and our body is ready for action, to a calm parasympathetic state, which is good for us, and a place where we can step back and think, okay, what do I really need to do here? What's the best thing to do for myself and for someone else or the animal? And also research has found that playing a little song on your phone, watching a little video of whatever it might be that connects to you, perhaps a funny cat or dog video, or perhaps something not related to the animals, but they found that can actually bring people to a calm place. So a benefit of this easy available tech world, which of course we all know sometimes we need to step back from that, but this is a plus, a little plus for the tech to be able to do that. And even just things like step outside for a minute and sit under a tree, again, getting that nature, forest bathing, they call it in Japan, actually. Trees give off a substance that actually helps build our immune system and can give us a sense of calm. I had given a workshop for a vet clinic in my area, and they have a big, beautiful tree right outside their back door. And they have found that to be a really helpful thing when somebody's feeling especially worked up or something's gotten them going, often from the human client, to just take a couple minutes and go stand or sit under that tree and then come back. So it's just that stepping back and listening to ourselves can make a big difference. And listen to you today. So every day is a different day and our needs are going to vary. So can we just take that little bit of time to listen to, what do I need today? And when we stop back and ask ourselves that question, it may be just a small few little minutes throughout the day that keeps us going and we're just energized by what we're doing and what's happening. Or sometimes that step back might be, I think I need to reflect and look at this. And maybe I need to change around a bit the way that I'm helping animals. And I'm possibly not picking the way that works best with who I am, just as I discovered my way of helping animals, being director of a whole rescue wasn't the best thing to do. And what I ended up doing was give Blessed Bonds to a larger organization and shelter that was able to handle it with more volunteers and work. And I found that my best energizing way to help animals is to help people like you, help people who help animals. And through that method, I'm able to listen to myself and feel energized and joyful, and yet still help animals my best way. It felt like it would have been nice to be involved in the direct way, but that didn't work. It didn't work for me. It didn't work for my people. Just a side thing, I had 2 different assistants working with me in a short amount of time that both quit. One just feeling way too much pressure. Another said that every time she talked to me, she would get worked up and she was starting to get stress hives on her. And so it just wasn't my way of helping. So sometimes we need to listen to see what do we really need, and be honest with ourselves. What's our best way? How are we best to be that vessel of compassion that will be flowing through to the animals and to people who help animals. As hard as people can be, animals need people. And sometimes we just need to step back and remember that and find our best role. Then we can be ready to do the second part, which is reframe the story. And that involves our thoughts. So thoughts are quite different from feelings. Feelings are never wrong. They're our natural expression of who we are, of the human condition. Thoughts are a different story, and they make up our stories. But we have what's called self-arising thoughts. Neuroscience research and psychology and mindfulness talk about these self-arising thoughts. Many of you may be familiar with that if you're into any kind of meditation. And the interesting thing about self-arising thoughts, they're just thoughts that come through our brains every second, all day long. They could be anything from what we're doing right now to all of a sudden the thought about somebody that we remember from 4th grade. I mean, anything is just possible for these thoughts. But neuroscience research shows that 75 to 90% of these self-arising thoughts that go through our brain tend to be negative, solving problems that might happen that aren't happening, concern about the future, often regrets or rehashing things from the past. That this is the default system for the brain. So if you notice that going on, it's not, wow, when did I become so negative? This is what these thoughts tend to be. And so when we add to that grief and loss and stress, what we find are automatic thoughts that can be things like when something happens that we didn't want to happen, or we're experiencing a loss or a challenge, it's all my fault. I did something wrong. I didn't do it right. Or it's all their fault. What I need has to wait. This is just too important. Forget about my needs. There's no time for myself. No time. Nope, that's out. No time. Maybe someday, but not now. Oh, things are just not going to work out. This is too much. These are some of the kinds of automatic thoughts that are going to come in when we're in that attuned to a need or a suffering and we're ready for action. This is what happens, the kinds of thoughts. So if we just are directly responding or reacting to these thoughts, we're not going to be coming from a calm place. We're not going to be coming from where we can access our best wisdom and take all things into account and know things that, remember things that we know. And the brain can even go further. There's what I call fantasy bargaining. And I see this a lot in the pet loss support group, where although it's too late, we can't change what's happening, our brains are not settling down about it. And we're going back and thinking, well, what if I would have done that? Or what if they would have done that? It could be totally different. And it's fantasy bargaining because it's too late. We know we can't make that be different, but the brain just obsesses over that anyway. And the tendency is to play back those last moments where there may have been a loss or a particular challenge over and over again. And it's a form of self-torment or self-torture. But again, we're not just being masochistic to ourselves. This is what the brain does. This is what self-arising thoughts do. And so what we need to do is step back and question what it is. Realize, all right, these are just those self-arising thoughts. I don't need to believe them. I don't need to engage in them. And then we can stop, pause, take a breath. And I love this picture of this cat who's at a cat vet clinic, who just stopped the facts right in its motion and decided, okay, that's enough. Time to scratch my belly. And that's exactly what we need to do sometimes. Stop and scratch a belly. And then in that moment of stepping back to remember, okay, I've got to let go of this superhuman guilt. And what I mean by superhuman guilt is because we want to help so badly, we expect ourselves to be able to do it. And it's superhuman to think we can just do everything all the time to reach our goal. And it's wonderful to keep that goal in mind, but at the same time to remember, okay, we're human, we don't know all things. And also to step back and say, okay, I do want to help, and I want to help the best I can with the conditions that I have and the knowledge that I have and the limitations that I have. But I didn't create these problems, but I'm here to help. Sometimes I think for animal people, as soon as they see the need or feel the need or hear the need, it becomes your problem that you must do. And if you don't totally take it on and fix it, then there's guilt. And that's where that stepping back and remembering your role in that whole greater picture. And your heart's there to do the best you can, but stepping back from taking that all on, which just becomes so heavy and depleting. And letting go of the journey of others is another big part of it. We can't change other people. We do our part, and then we got to let go. So it's helping where we can, educating. It sometimes has to mean saying, no, our organization can't help, but here's some things you can do. And then letting go. We just can't take that all on. The self-growth of others is not your job. We plant the seeds. We may not know where those seeds go or how they grow, but we need to let go. And being able to let go of that journeys of other people, it can really help from being weighed down to remember, okay, I'm doing the best I can from where I'm at and who I am. I can't get this other organization to change or even my coworkers. I can say something and then let it go. Or again, of course, the people that you're helping the animals that they've let go. And then realize, okay, thinking is still a good thing. We need thinking for problem solving, but we can stop, let go of those automatic thoughts, at least believing them or following them, and realize, okay, I'm going to choose what I want to focus on. I see those thoughts going through, I honor my feelings, but now I'm going to choose not to go with the self-judgments of the what ifs and the if onlys. And I'm going to put in a higher value, higher quality thought. We do the best we can at the time with love. And what kind of an analogy we could look at is a dog hanging onto a bone and not letting it go. That's just what he knows. He wants it. And so how do we get that bone away from him? So think of the bone as our automatic thoughts. Okay, it doesn't work to just go grab the bone out of his mouth. He's going to grip it harder and hang on. So we don't want to just directly fight those automatic thoughts to try to get rid of them. But what can we do? We can focus on, like we would for the dog, a higher value treat we give the dog and the bone gets let go of. A higher value thought for ourselves. We do the best we can at the time and we can let go of those thoughts. So how can we reframe? There's our frame. Any way that works for you is absolutely fine, but just as little helpers, I've got gratitude, think in terms of what we're grateful for, the gifts of the journey, the gifts of the challenge, even the gifts we can find even in the grief, and then growth. How can we look at it as we're going on to the next? And an example that I have here was a workshop I was giving to some people who were in a kitty nursery, some of these newborn kitty nurseries that exist attached to many of the organizations and shelters throughout the country. And this particular person had only been volunteering for a little while, and a lot of kittens had come in. There was urgency, and so she was being taught how to place some tubes for feeding in kittens. And one of the procedures didn't go very well, and the little kitten passed away. And she was just devastated and thinking about quitting and feeling totally inadequate and beating herself up about it. And then engaged in honoring her feelings of having experienced that loss with just who she wanted to save, and then reframing her story. And when she did that, she was able to feel gratitude that she was able to do this work that she loved so much and be around all these wonderful little beings. And she was able to note the gift of when she had this experience, how the other people, the other volunteers and staff who were in the kitten nursery were so supportive of her and talked about their stories and shared with her. And then she was able to look at the growth, learning from her mistakes and continuing to honor that kitten by continuing to help more kittens. And so that became the story that she played in her mind when she thought about that kitten who she wanted to never forget. But this way she was able to think about that kitten in positive terms and feel that life was not in vain, and honor that kitten and her efforts and determination to go on. And so at the same time, what she was doing was creating a neural pathway in her brain, because this is what happens our brains tell stories. We see life in terms of stories, and we will replay stories in our minds. And so now when she would think of that kitten, by having this, she was able to replay that story from that perspective. And so this is a template for doing that. And I have included that in things that Ray will attach for people that want it, along with the slides. What's your story? And this is a template that I use quite frequently, always in my life when I'm experienced any kind of loss or even challenges. Okay, what am I grateful for? What are the gifts that I want to step back and be able to see in this experience? And where is there an opportunity for growth? And I might just write it on there, and I will post it up by my computer where I see it every day. And then that will become my story. And I've done that when I've experienced loss of my beloved pets, like my chili dog. I put a picture of him in the middle and wrote about what I'm grateful for to have had him for 5 wonderful years, and the gifts and growth of the journey as he led me to make some changes in my Healing Heart workshops, and realizing that we can create these neural pathways. So whenever I think of Chili Dog, I'm going to think about the story that I told and am remembering about him, full of joy, gratitude, gifts, and growth, rather than otherwise what my brain would replay, which would be often, the sadness or the last day with Chili or the grief regarding his death. But when we tell a new story and get that in our brains, then that's what's attached to Chili Dog. So when I think of Chili Dog, my immediate first few seconds is joy and feeling blessed that I had him, because that would be the story that I replayed. So that is how it works. And when we're needing to come up with ways to replay it, I also gave you a handout, examples of reframing, where you can certainly come up with your own, but there's ways to show you how that can be done. Like, how long can I continue to work like this might be your automatic thought. And then the reframing for that day might be, well, I will face today's challenges only, one day at a time. Or I really need others to understand me in order to deal with this. The reframing could be, well, self-compassion can offer me all kinds of strength and support as well. So you can go over those handouts at your own leisure too. Because we want to find and live in that underlying joy and contentment that is always available on this journey that we're on. And it's contagious to people and animals. Joy is what is going to make helping animals and loving them and seeing their incredible value more mainstream than anything else. And when Faith and I wrote our book, The Power of Joy in Giving to Animals, we spent a long time trying to come up with the right title, and we're sending titles back and forth to each other, like Battling Burnout, Preventing Compassion Fatigue, SOS, to get through surviving your journey with animals, all kinds of things like that. And then one day we just realized, really, this is all about joy, just getting back to feeling that incredible joy that we feel with our animal friends. And so then we came up with the joy, that's where the power really is keeping us on this journey. And the power of joy is not free of sadness, stress, and challenges, but it's a peaceful aliveness. Joy is the unfolding of that inner knowing that where you are right now is exactly where your unique gifts are meant to be shared. And joy is the courage to be there. And I love that word courage. And I discovered that it was the root word, the French word is heart. It's the way of the heart. So joy is the courage to go the way of the heart, the flow of compassion. And that's where we'll find tremendous power. So in finishing today, I would like to share with you the story of Felix the cat, because we all know our animal friends are the role models for us. I do think that's why animal people are so special, because you have the most loving, compassionate, unconditional characters in our animal friends that are teaching us so much along the way when we're able to step back and open to the wisdom that they have. Felix was a 20-year-old cat when I met him. So he was coming to the cat vet, who had also developed a little sanctuary in her practice, accidentally, but then it became official. So Felix was coming to the sanctuary by Arlene's daughter. So Felix had lived with Arlene for 20 years. She had retired when she was 60 years old, and Felix had gotten Felix as a little 8-week-old rescue kitten. And Felix and Arlene were together for 20 years. She spoiled them. It was just the two of them, and it was an incredible bond. She stirred his food and warmed it up. And so at this point in time, sadly, Arlene's daughter said that the doctors had just said Felix just can't stay in the house anymore. Arlene had so many medical issues that were related to her breathing, and she was actually allergic to Felix. She was in the landing herself in the emergency and hospital, and it was just also becoming very difficult with her medical conditions to care for him. Very sad, but the daughter felt this is what needed to be done, and she didn't know, would maybe the most humane thing be to euthanize Felix? Can he possibly get along after having been with Arlene? Well, so Doc, as we called her, said, well, let's see how it goes. And so Felix joined the other sanctuary cats that were free roaming in her place. And within the shortest amount of time, Felix was integrating himself in and having a good time. He was focused on self-care and comfort. So he was making sure he was sampling all the different food that was available for the other cats and for himself. And he had no teeth at this point at age 20, but certainly was able to gulp down that soft food. And he asked for what he needed. I was a volunteer at the time. There were other volunteers and staff, and he just came up to us when he needed pets, and he gave what we would call full body hugs, where he would hop up on our lap and put his arms around our neck and just squeeze really hard, full body hug. And when he would do that, often all kinds of different colored substances would come out of his nose, and we would all just laugh and say, that's our lovable Felix. And so he gave himself comfort. He needed that in dealing with his own grief. And then he was ready to reframe his journey and find a new story, which he did. He opened his heart to all of us, to all the other cats. He had an amazing way about him where he could sense when cats were possibly going to get into it with each other, and he would just come by and make peace. And everybody loved Felix. The clients that came in, the delivery people, the whole vet team and volunteers, and even a dog that came to work every day at the clinic. And Felix became really good buddies. And even some senior cats got adopted thanks to Felix. So people would say, oh, I want a cat like Felix. And Doc decided she would keep Felix close at hand because of his various medical concerns. So he would stay. But other older cats got adopted due to how wonderful Felix role modeled the benefits of an older cat. But the biggest lesson that we learned from Felix happened on a sad day, actually. Felix didn't look quite right, was sitting in a in the cat tree. And so one of the volunteers swooped him up and handed him over to Doc to check him out and see what was going on. This had happened, many times before in his older age, and Doc was able to do a few things, give him fluids, patch him up, and he'd be back to his old self. But on this particular morning, Felix just quietly passed away right in Doc's arms. And the staff and volunteers, of course, we were all shocked, and it felt upsetting. And we just said, well, what happened? She's always been able to make them better. And geez, Felix is only 23 and a half years old, but it's hard. It's hard no matter what when we lose them. But we were given the most amazing gift, because later on, early that evening, we got a call from Arlene's daughter, who just wanted to let us know that her mother, Arlene, Felix's companion for 20 years, had passed away that evening. And it was just heartwarming in our loss, because we felt, well, of course, Felix needed to get there first before crossing Rainbow Bridge and leading he and Arlene, his mom, together to what's next. And here we got to really get a little glimpse of that mystery and power of joy, of love, of the human animal eternal bond. It was just wonderful. And so, of course, the lesson there for all of us is that power of joy. And can we just step back, and when we're doing our wonderful life-saving work, to step back and listen to the life-saving messages that those animals were saving are wanting to give to ourselves. So thank you very much. That is the end of my presentation. And if anybody has any questions or comments about it, please feel free to email me at linda@drlindaharper.com. So linda@drlindaharper.com. And I'm happy to take your questions, hear your comments, anything that you would like to say. I would love to hear from you. And again, thank you for this opportunity. And I hope to be able to someday see you guys in person. Thank you.